Alright, I'm going to explain what I did. One thing I'm just going to tell you guys is that this mod made this thing change drastically. I mean, it handles so much better. I got home from work today, finished the last 2 shocks in the back. I put 30 weight oil in the back, I got 45 in the front. I'll probably go a little thicker, maybe a 35 or 40 in the back. The difference between the 35 and the 40 is pretty significant. You can really tell a difference, so that's a good thing in my opinion, because it allows you a lot more tunability with the different weights of shock oil. So there's 2 parts of this mod. So the first one I did, I already opened this up and drained it, so it's ready to go, so this video doesn't take forever. But basically you just open it up, drain out all the oil that's in there, remove the bottom link mount. I loosen up this cap a little bit. You can push the rod out, and then there's, you see the miniature little piston that's on it. And I don't know how well you can see it in the video, but these little grooves on the side of the piston and the shock are they're kind of big. You probably can't see it too well, but they're kind of big for the size of the bore of the shock and the oil that was in there. It's just the shock moves so freely in here that that's why it's so springy and bouncy. So the first thing that I kind of did to kind of add a little friction to this is when I unscrewed this cap, the O-ring that's in there, there's a couple O-rings. There's 2 of these little red O-rings. There's a plastic bushing in there, and then inside here there's another one of the red O-rings and another plastic bushing. So there's 2 O-rings and 2 bushings in there. So one thing that I did is I found in my kit a different O-ring. Again, it's going to be really hard to see probably, but this O-ring's a little thicker. The ring itself is thicker, and the center diameter of the hole is smaller. And I got this out of it's part of an old Team Associated RC10 shock, and this is the kit that it came out of. I mean, I've probably had this for 15 years laying around. But what I did was I just basically swapped out the one bottom O-ring in the shock for the one out of the Associated to give it a little bit tighter fit. So basically, when you put this smaller one on and thread the cap back on, you'll notice, kind of leave it a little loose and push it through because it is a little bit tighter fit, and then tighten this down, and that gives you probably twice as much friction than that O-ring had in it. So that right there alone helps. So if you want to try that first, it might be all you need to get to where you're happy. Now I'm going to pause this and I'll start up again and show you the second part. Alrighty, second part. This here is a stock Wraith shock out of the kit. It's not from the RTR, it's out of the kit. It's got the tie-eye shaft, and the rest of it's all plastic like everything else. So what I did was, I already drained this one too, so it's pretty much just empty because I didn't want this to take too long. Remove the bottom shock or the link. Get the little bumper out of there. Take this out, and I noticed that the shaft on this shock is basically, it's the same diameter. They're both 3 or 3.5 millimeter. My calipers say it's 3.5, but if you look it up, the part, it says 3 millimeter. But if you take this one, then you're going to have to take off the little C-clip that's on there. These things that like to fly across the room when you remove them. Just kind of pop it off and pop it out and remove the bushing. So what I noticed is, if you look at where the piston seats and where the bottom of the travel is, I kind of put it in there and kind of floated through travel on both of them, and it's the same same amount of travel. This shaft is a little longer, but it's the threads, and I'll show you that when I get to that. So what I figured I'd try, I was messing around with it, and I figured I'd try. I took the setup, because this has a screw, and put this little shim on here, just the way it was with the, the axial setup with the piston and the axial shock. But I put the piston from the king shock on there, and these washers or shims, and then the bolt, and then I tighten this down, just enough to get the threads to the top of the bushing there. Hopefully this video isn't like 4 gigs, but I just tighten it down enough. And again, you probably won't see it, but what this actually does, these shims or washers actually cover up part of those little holes that the oil flows through. So it's going to restrict the oil going through and slow it down, which is going to effectively give you some damping. So basically it goes back together exactly the same way. And I'm going to get it together and pause this for a minute, and then, so you always want to loosen this up a little bit with that thicker O-ring in there, and then push it through, then you can pull it through. And again, your amount of travel here is exactly the same as it was with that shaft. So I'll pause it, and then I'll kind of get back together and show you the bleeding, how I bled it. Okay, so I went ahead and put the link on there, the connector, and threaded it on. And as you can see it's threaded on all the way, but there's some extra threads there. That's where that extra length is showing up. I mean, you can cut that off, shorten it if you want, but that will reduce your travel. What I did was I basically just took I had a little O-ring here that I put on there. It acts like a bump stop. If you actually find the travel on these 110s are too long for you, you can actually put back on this bumper that came off the axial shock, and it completely covers that up anyways. The O-ring, it covers up, even with just the O-ring, it covers up the threads completely anyways. Once you got the shock on there, you don't see any threads. There is this little flat spot here that they machined in there to allow you to get a wrench or tool on there to remove this stuff, but my only concern with it is it coming up when it compresses and starts to chunk out that O-ring we put in there, but I haven't seen that yet, so I'm just keeping an eye on it. I took a little jeweler's file to kind of smooth that out a little bit, but other than that, that's it. So I just basically did a standard bleeding procedure. I have to get out of the camera shot here for a second, and I basically fill this up about halfway, maybe a little more, depends on your how eager you are to get this done. And then, just like basically any other shock procedure, you want to work out the air in it. Not much coming up. Boy, I can really feel the difference in the friction and the damping that this is allowing this shock to have now. So basically, once I kind of bleed it out, I'll push the piston up until the tip of the bolt just shows up, and I'll keep going as far as I can go till it bottoms out. And I did a pretty good job this time. I do it right till it gets to the very top of the bolt. Maybe there's a little too much in there. I can take a drop out. Take a little bit out. So with the shock fully compressed and the top of the shaft there, I bring the oil level just straight up to that, and then I'll put the cap back on. I'll show you how to fill this reservoir later. No, I'm just kidding, that's fake. Or however they pronounce it. I call it fake, whatever. So once we get that on there, you can see it cycles all the way down, all the way up, no hydrolock, no vacuum, and it's got a good, I mean, the oil is actually almost to the top, so I mean, yeah, there's a little air in there, but it's a lot more oil than was in it when I got it. So having it like that, just going to pop the springs back on, the spring retainer on, and I just give this enough preload to hold the spring on there, hardly any, and you'll see how slowly it returns. It's not just banging back, it's a lot, and you can feel when you're compressing, it's got some dampening to it. You can just feel the fluid going through it now, unlike before. So that's it. It's pretty simple. It takes 10-15 minutes to do it. Once you do the first one, the rest of them just go fast. So you can do the mod with the O-ring and it'll help alone. You don't even need to disassemble the shock to do it. You can just turn it upside down, take the spring off, remove that bottom part, switch out that red O-ring with one of the ones from this kit, or find something similar. You know, they're just a little thicker and a little smaller diameter on the inside. When you compress that thing down there, it puts a little more pressure on the shaft to give it a little bit more resistance. And you definitely don't need to have the tie-eye unless you want to, do further damping with the thing in there. I'm looking to see if there's other shafts available, Kyosho or Traxxas or any of them that all have a similar shock that you can just buy these shafts to make it work. But the key is to have that screw, that nut connection on top, so you can put those washers in there to kind of close off those damping holes. Anyways, if you decide to give it a try, post up and let me know if it works out for you on rccrawler.com. This is Heckler. Thank you much.